Now, I'd always been a troublemaker, for as long as I can remember. I think by the time I was 13, I was getting into trouble with the police. I was taking drugs, smoking cannabis, I was taking ecstasy. I've been arrested for shoplifting. I've been done for burglary, for arson, criminal damage. There was something about getting into trouble that just really excited me. And the more I tried to sort myself out, the worse that I got. I was selling most drugs in most nightclubs. Those places that I wasn't selling drugs, I made sure I had people selling drugs for me in those places. I got so good at selling drugs, I got so good at doing what I was doing, that I started to get noticed by the people above me. It wasn't long before I started selling drugs for them. Now, we was buying drugs from people like the Albanian Mafia, and we're selling to the likes of Hells Angels. We was buying 1 or 2 kilos of cocaine a week. And I was looking for fulfillment in drugs, in sex, in power, in my status. The only problem is when you have a status, when you have a reputation, you've got to live up to that. And you've got to do things to make sure that people don't take that from you. The guy that I was selling drugs for, the gang leader as you might call him, he phoned me up and told me that he'd been attacked by a rival gang. And so he asked me to go to one of the safe houses and to pick up a firearm. I was nervous, very nervous about what was about to happen. But I went to this safe house and I put on a brave front, and I picked up a firearm, and I remember getting into my friend's car that day, leaving the house with the intention to kill. That day, if I'd have bumped into these guys, if we'd have found the people that we was looking for, I'd have pulled the trigger. Thankfully that day I never had to do what I thought I was going to have to do, and we didn't find anybody. And I think, if I'm honest, at that point I realised that I needed help. I desperately needed help. Although I knew that I needed help, I couldn't help myself. And so slowly, over time, as I got into more and more trouble, I ended up in prison. And I remember looking out the little window in this prison wagon with my hands cuffed, looking at the guards and the towers, and seeing the gates, and suddenly realising that, you know what, you're not a gangster, you're an idiot, you've messed up your life, and now you've got to deal with the consequences. You're in prison. A prisoner who'd been transferred with me from one prison to the other came to me and started to talk to me about God. I couldn't understand what I was hearing. I couldn't understand it. Here I was in prison with my life in danger, and this guy wanted to talk to me about God. How could God help me? How could God help me in the situation that I got myself into? It was a couple of days later that I was walking past the chapel sign-up sheet. So when you're in prison, what you do is you sign up your name to chapel, and on a Sunday a guard would come to you and they'd release you from your cell and they'd take you to the chapel. And I signed up my name to go to chapel. For some reason, at that very moment in time, a sense of peace hit me that I'd never experienced anywhere else before. So I remember going back to my cell, and I don't remember exactly what I said, but it was something along the lines of, God, if you're out there, if you are who these people say you are, then help me. Whatever it costs, whatever I have to do, whatever the cost to me may be, I am yours. I give my life to you. Please take my life and do with it whatever you want. The gang that I was involved with were caught in a drugs raid, and they were taken off the streets. The relationships that we're in, they started to break down. All the time, this gave me more and more time to work on my relationship with God. I was no longer a drug addict. There was no drugs rehabilitation. There was no counselling. There was no replacement therapy. It was just the power of God, His word and prayer. What I found when I came to church was something different. The people were different. They seemed to have this sense of joy about them. They were loving and caring, and they just accepted me for who I was. I'm looking forward to the future. I'm not entirely sure where this journey is going to lead me, but I'm looking forward to seeing where it's going. My life has changed massively. All I want to do now is try and help people not to make the same mistakes that I made. I've been back to a prison, and I got to share a message of hope with the people that were in there. I'm working with a local youth group, trying to encourage those kids not to make the same mistakes that I made.